this the second version of the Christmas edition. I guess we could say the New Year's edition. We're just about there, Alicia, just about to 2023, December 29th today. How are you doing?
I'm well. Yeah, last week, oh my goodness, it was like minus 40 degrees Celsius. And then this week, now it's nice. It's, minus 3. It's all foggy. And so everything has hoarfrost on it. It's really pretty outside. It feels very Christmassy and very festive outside. So that's nice to see.
Excellent. Well, I know we were able to get up to Lake Louise and go skiing for the first time. And yesterday in my live, I shared a little picture here. I'll pull on the screen if it decides to go on there. There we go, of the crew. And I'd never been on a 6-seater lift chair before, but I absolutely loved Lake Louise. I absolutely did. It was, yeah, it was really, really a beautiful hill, and there were lots of runs. And I don't know if you've ever skied Lake Louise before, but my in-laws had gotten us lift tickets. Not something we probably could have afforded on our own, but my in-laws got us lift tickets, and so it was a lot of fun. Up until the point where I started getting motion sickness, and this has been the latest thing. This is what happens when you get old, you guys. So skiing down the hill, about halfway through the day, I started getting motion sickness, so I had to pack it in. And so I'm
Oh
going to have to
no.
look at some more strategies going forward. But my kids and my wife, they had a really good time skiing. We all did. So yes, so lots of fun.
I
That's
just
for
cross
sure.
country, Mark. I
That's
never
smart.
go fast enough to get motion sickness. I just cross country ski. It's all good.
Perfect. Well, let's see who we got tuning in here. So we've got Noor says, I love Canada. Well, that's great. We do too. Make sure when you're tuning in, let us know where you're tuning in from. And yeah, this is going to be another fun live immigration Q&A. Alicia and I are immigration lawyers with Holthe Immigration Law, which is the sponsor of everything that we're doing here on the Canadian Immigration Institute. And we'd encourage you to go and check out our law firm website, holthelaw.com, and see what we have going on there. But there are a lot of people through the holidays here that are hopefully taking a little bit of time off, but there's no rest for the wicked here, Alicia. So we're still at it. Okay, let's see who else we have. Salim says, hey, Mark and Alicia, good to see you again. Good to see you, Salim. And we've got a signature. Hello to you. Let's see who else we have. Gooner Boy. Awesome. He says, I love the theme wallpaper. Well, we're trying to make things a little bit different, although the strobe light apparently was a little bit distracting. And so we've kind of minimized the strobe. So you can just kind of, the little flashing lights are just peeking on the side. So hopefully they're not too distracting for people. Let's see who else we have here. Hold off on your questions. We'll get to those for sure. Oh, okay. So signature is in Calgary. So that's where Alicia is right now. I'm in Lethbridge, Alberta, in our home offices. And the paparazzi here, Alicia says, what do you think about Windsor? Well, I'm not quite sure what the response is. I'm sure it's a nice place.
My uncle lived there for years. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and then we've got Diana Lopez. Hello, Diana. Happy holidays to you too. And Meet Shaw says hi from Toronto. Finally. Well, congratulations. I'm glad that you are there. So this is your opportunity to get your questions answered from two Canadian immigration lawyers. This is something that we do every Thursday morning. We've now moved to noon Mountain Time just because it works a little bit better for us. This used to always be at 11. But we are going live here at noon Mountain Time. And yeah, the success of this comes from your great questions. So when you're posting questions, it's always good to put a Q in front of them so we know it's a question, not just you guys talking back and forth amongst the various channels that we broadcast to. Shout out to those who are watching on YouTube. We also send this out to LinkedIn and Facebook. We've got our Express Entry Law private Facebook group, as well as the Canadian Immigration Institute Facebook page, and even to Twitter, although I haven't seen too many people connecting in from Twitter. But if you're watching on LinkedIn, I'd love to see where you're tuning in from. Let's see, we've got a few other people that are saying hello. So we have Ario says, hey, Mark, love what you're doing. Keep soaring. Kingsley from Regina. Thanks so much, Kingsley. Really appreciate it. We've got Sonali's over in Mumbai, India, which, wow, you are dedicated, Sonali. It's about 12:45 probably there, a.m. yeah, let's see, 12:45 p.m. Over in Mumbai right now. So good to have you connecting in. And let's see, we've got Bob, who's over tuning in on the Canadian Immigration Institute Facebook page. Happy holidays to you. GS is in Toronto. And Samrat, good to see you as well. Happy holidays. And ZR is from Pakistan. So welcome, welcome. All right. So there's been a couple interesting things, Alicia, that have been unfolding. And one of them is the this whole delay, and you can see there's questions. I'll pull one up right here. Let's see if we can find all of the numerous questions that are already coming in. And the questions relate to this. So Manpreet says, will a draw take place on January the 4th? So Alicia, what the heck is going on here? And I'll shift this over to our site, and then I'm actually going to pull up a little message that we got from IRCC. But what are your thoughts on this?
So everything started with November 16th. So when they switched over from the old NOC system to the new NOC system, and that's the National Occupation Classification Code, there were a bunch of problems in Express Entry. So IRCC did not foresee that the new 4 to 5 digit tier system, so it went from 4 digits to 5 digits, caused a bunch of havoc in the Express Entry system. And so people had only a short time from November 16th to the 23rd to go in and update their primary occupation NOC, update their work experience to make sure that everything was properly coded. But on the back end, there's been a number of problems in terms of what the system then is recognizing when people switched over to the new NOCs. So it's messing up work experience, it's messing up spousal points for people who are applying with an accompanying spouse, and it's also messing up who qualifies for CEC. So sometimes if people have only had a few months of Canadian work experience and they put it in, the system all of a sudden says they're eligible for CEC, which they're not, because you're not eligible for Canadian experience class unless you've worked in Canada for at least 1 year. But they have been working on these glitches, and we had hoped that maybe they would have fixed the glitches, because they last draw was November 23rd. They didn't do a draw mid-month in November, and then they didn't do one, mid-month in December, and then they didn't do one December 28th either, yesterday. So what they've said, they've sent out an email to some representatives, and they have said, look, we understand, we're still fixing it. We've fixed some of the glitches, but here's the email that they have sent.
Yeah, and I just pulled out the text because obviously I didn't want to accidentally start sharing IRCC's direct email contacts from the immigration officials. But yeah, this is the message that we got. So it's a little update. And you can see, like Alicia identified, she says, so IRCC would like to provide an update on the ongoing IT issues. And why are there no draws? Guys, realistically, it's not because caps have been met or things like that. It's really IT related. And so IT issues impacting Express Entry clients as a result of the NOC updates on November 16th. So you can see as of December the 19th, they've identified and resolved the majority of IT issues impacting clients in Express Entry, including those in the PNP. And then they've also resolved most challenges experienced by PNP clients using these codes, which is intended for clients. This 93888 is intended for clients applying with a NOC 2016 code after November 16, 2022. That's related to the PNPs, this portion. And then, however, ongoing issues remain for clients through the Federal Skilled Trade Program who are using the code. So obviously this code is causing lots of problems. And I find it interesting, Alicia, because they haven't talked anything about the problems with accompanying spouses and, their points not being properly attributed, or what you'd indicated with the whole CEC debacle with people having only a few months getting ITAs. And so it says is closely examining the issue, and we're working as quickly as we can to find solutions. We'll advise as soon as we have more information. And and then they tell us to continue sending stuff through the normal web form route when we are complaining about all the problems. So this is a reality, guys, and we don't know. It's hard to predict when they're going to do anything because I have no clue who these tech people are that they're using to try to sort this out. But my goodness, if this was private industry, this company would be defunct. It would be shut down and closed because of the complete mismanagement of this rollover. Can you imagine in private industry what would happen if these type of things occurred? And unfortunately for you guys, these people are not paid or compensated based on the the quality of the product they're turning out. So I'll leave it at that. So lots of questions from people
Yes.
on that front.
So I would hope that if they've got most of the issues sorted out, if it truly is down to federal skilled trades applications that they're having problems with, then that should be a relatively narrow segment of the express entry pool. And so hopefully there will be a draw on January. Well, it probably won't be January 4th because they usually do every 2 weeks. So if they miss the 28th, maybe, I guess it could be the 4th, but it might more likely be the 11th. So we'll see, right? Because they were doing it every 2 weeks as of when they started in July of 2022, but now they have had a month with no draws. So I guess we'll have to see, did they restart on the same schedule that they used to be on, which would be a January 11th draw, or maybe they'll change to a different day, or who knows what'll happen. So we'll have to stay tuned in January to see when the next ITA will be.
Yeah, exactly. And Ravi just confirmed, I was looking at my own clock. Yes, it is indeed 12:45 a.m. in India right now. So thank you for pointing that out. We've got a few other people I want to give shout outs to. So we've got Betty, who's over in Kamloops, BC. You guys have had a little bit of snow and colder weather out there. Same thing for Alejandro, who's also over in Victoria, I think is what he has there. Happy holidays to you too. So great to have you guys connecting in. And let's jump here. It looks like we've got a super chat. This is from Gooner Boy. It says, hi, Mark and Alicia. I submitted my CEC profile in November, and it shows I passed my medical yesterday. They never asked for my family 5406 in the original profile, but they now sent me an update, additional info requesting the 5406 within 7 days. Is this normal for a CEC? You know, the reality, Gooner Boy, is what is normal? I don't think there's any normal anymore in this type of a situation. But Alicia, what are your thoughts with them asking for the additional family information form, in the context of a CEC application? And we don't know a lot, about Gooner Boy's background, but.
Yeah, so Gooner Boy, I would recommend you book a consult because whenever you have this additional family information form or, the Schedule A, they're asking for an updated 5669. Maybe they're also asking for that and not just the 5406. I'm not sure. When they have these additional document requests, these ADRs we call them, and they only give you a short time frame within which to do them, it's really important that you are searching your application for anything that you may have missed, anything that could be potentially construed as misrepresentation in any of your previous immigration applications. So this is the thing with CEC applicants. Normally people have come here on a study permit and then they got a PGWP and then they maybe got a work permit and then maybe they had one of those 18-month work permits that were under an open public policy. And all the while, you would have submitted multiple immigration application forms. And if there's anything that doesn't quite make sense for them with respect to family members or where your family is or who is included in which application and why, they might just be trying to double check things. And you really want to be careful that they are not searching for misrepresentation, because if they find that you've misrepresented, even if it's an innocent misrep, you can be barred for 5 years and inadmissible for any sort of PR or temporary applications. So just be really careful. Book a consult if you can, because it is something that we would want to look at with you to try to figure out, why are they asking you for the family members? Where are the family members? Have the family member moved? Did you change your family composition? Did you get divorced, or do you have a new common law spouse? Did you have a common law spouse you didn't declare at some point in your application? Are there any kids involved? So those are all things I'd want to ask you about specifically.
Absolutely. And this is where people can get themselves into lots of trouble when there are family members that they have maybe disclosed in one application and haven't disclosed in another, or they've omitted some or included some that weren't previously included. And, IRCC gets pretty fussy about this stuff, and you definitely don't want to take any chances. But yeah, in the context of a CEC application like you've identified, and especially with your express entry application, very, very rarely have I ever seen them come back and ask for this, except in situations where there's been a new child that's been, that's come into the family. You're adding family members, essentially changing compositions. The only other time we get these types of things is if they are on the border, that they're on the verge of suggesting there might be some misrepresentation. So it's something you definitely want to watch out for.
And just be careful too, because sometimes there are two different family information forms, right? Like you've said, there's the 5406, but there's also the 5707. And depending on the family form, yeah, so if it's just the
Yeah,
5406, that's weird.
really
And
strange.
so sometimes you would have probably done the 5707 as part of a study permit application if you came on a study permit or a work permit. And some of them list the siblings and some of them don't. So maybe if you are claiming points for a sibling, that could be another thing where maybe in the past you didn't declare a Canadian sibling and now they're trying to figure out where the Canadian sibling has come from or where they are. But please book a consult because usually it's the Schedule A, the 5669 that they're asking for. It's not usually the 5406.
Okay, let's see here. Let's go to our next question. Well, we've got a few more. I'll shout out to Mario, who's down in Southern California. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to you as well. Let's see here. Man Priestess, thank you, Mark and Alicia, for the clarification. Hope the draws resume soon. I think we all do. Let's see here. Okay, so let's jump back to some that I've tagged. All right, so this individual says, I'm from Anguilla, I think. I'm planning for a move to Canada in the summer of 2023 to study. I'm planning to travel with my husband and my son. What advice can you give me as an international student before moving? So, I don't know if this is in the context of an approval already or whether just submitting, but what are your thoughts on individuals in this situation?
Yeah. So one thing I did want to highlight, and this was Cedric was busy in the wee hours, so he was busy with a new going live on his end to try to get some new information out there because we are coming to the end of the year. And so there are some things that are shifting for students and the temporary public policies for students. And there's kind of an overall, a full facilitation measure, and then there's also kind of a temporary facilitation measure for students. So one of the things that I would say Ms. Stevens should be looking at is this program going to be eligible for the PGWP? And, is there any sort of study that was outside of Canada before the study to Canada when you're looking at eligibility for PGWP? And some of those programs are going to be counted as eligible and some of them are not. And it really depends what your terms were and when you got your study permit. And so be careful about all these temporary public policies. I can foresee a time, probably in about a year from now, where things are going to get really messy for a lot of people who didn't carefully read this temporary policy and then this one on top of it. And then wait a minute, but the cutoff was December 31st, 2022. And so depending on what kind of study permit you have and when you initially applied for it, some of them are allowed to be stacking. So usually you'll want to maximize your PGWP eligibility. So make sure your program is with a designated learning institution and the program of studies is at least 8 months in duration if you're going to stack it with another one. But ideally, your initial program of studies is going to be 2 years in duration. So you're eligible for a 3-year PGWP. If you are traveling with a husband and son, then hopefully you've been approved on your study permit application. It's harder when you're trying to bring your entire kind of nuclear family with you. But if you can, if they got approved too, that's great. Make sure that you can prove that you're still accepted. You've got your letter of acceptance, you've paid your tuition, you have a place to go, you're able to pay your expenses, not only for yourself, which is normally about $10,000 per principal applicant, but about $4,000 per accompanying family member also. So have a plan to show how you're going to take care of a child and be able to study. Maybe your husband's going to be helping take care of your son. But if there's childcare things, make sure that it's clear to the officer how you guys are going to manage going to school, working, and supporting a child at the same time. And then just make sure that when you are coming, you still can show those temporary ties to your home country because technically you're not coming here as a permanent resident, you're only coming here temporarily. So you have to be able to prove if you were required to go back to your home country, you could do so. So that's important evidence to bring too.
There we go. Great. Thanks, Alicia. All right. So this individual is in the Express Entry Law private Facebook group. Says, hi, I'm new here and hope to get support to put up my documents to be able to make it to Canada. Where can I start from, please? Well, obviously, as a law firm, Holthe Immigration Law, this is what we help people with all the time, is developing immigration strategies. If you're in the Express Entry Law private Facebook group, it's a great place to post your questions to get answers from other group members. The group has always been large. I think there's 124,000, and then Facebook said, we're not going to let it get any bigger. It's just too big. And in fairness, that's right. There's a lot of people in there that are members, but you can post your questions there. Also within our law firm website, I'm just going to flip over here and just adjust this window so that we get back to the web browser. When you are connecting in, you'll be able to see here. We'll just pull this down if it wants to. Oh, looks like we got a little bit of an interesting combination going there. Okay. So yeah, so if you want, you can always come to our site, and all you have to do is just click on speak to a lawyer right here or in the description below, and you can schedule a consultation, and we can kind of develop a roadmap and a strategy for you. So you can book a consult with any of the 4 lawyers that we have here within the firm. And we look forward to connecting with you and giving you whatever help and direction we can. Okay, let's see who is next here. So Amongst Us says, hey, do you think a new COVID wave would affect immigration the same way it did for the last 2 to 3 years? What do you think, Alicia? If we were to have this all over again, do you think that it would affect immigration in the same way? And if not, why not?
I don't think so. I mean, I think it was truly exceptional what happened during the very beginning of the pandemic and everything shut down. Like, oh my goodness, I know as an immigration lawyer, like I've been doing this for 19 years now, and I have never seen it was like every single institution and everything we thought we could rely on was successively collapsing. And I don't think it'll be like that again if there is another COVID wave. I think the government has become a little bit more nimble in terms of realizing what's going on, that the doors still need to stay open, that they still need to process. They have ways that lots of officers are able to work remotely. They can allocate things from all over the world right now. More and more has gone to digitized online processing. Like if you look back at the beginning of the year, like it's a nice time to do a retrospective. The beginning of the year, there were many more paper applications that were still getting filed. And now it's mandatory for almost
Yeah.
all applications for PR to go through the new PR portal or through GCMS. And so everything now is scanned. And so officers can be allocated that work from anywhere in the world. I think in terms of the travel restrictions, in terms of the shutdowns at the border, I don't think there's the political appetite to have a blanket travel restriction anymore at the border because of economic reasons and political pressures. And so I think they will keep things open, and they will continue to process. They are, of course, switching to the new tier system, and they're rolling out new technology, and for sure there will be glitches. We just know that things happen with IRCC glitches, and it's taking them a while to get their systems properly updated. But more and more they're trying to move away from that outdated GCMS to the new PR portals, and for sure they started with kind of a minimum viable product, and we're hoping that it improves.
Yes. All right, next question is from GS. He says, there will be any CEC draws in 2023? With C-19 and everything that's transpiring, Alicia, what do you think? Do you think the minister would, decide to do a CEC only draw?
Maybe. I mean, if they're trying to target a bunch of people who, especially because they've had the shutdown now for a month when they haven't done express entry draws for a no program specified, maybe they will try to target and scoop out some of those Canadian candidates. And of course, we know, we had that huge February 14th draw of everybody in the express pool, entry pool that had 75 points or more under CEC was scooped out. It's possible they could do something like that. Probably, I don't think it'll be such a dramatic scoop like that, but we are hurting for workers right now in Canada. It's harder and harder to try to find people to fill positions. And I think that's getting reflected. We have a bunch more employers, small, medium, large employers who are coming to us to try to get help with their labor market impact assessments. And those are getting approved, and they're getting approved quickly. And so that is a reflection of the fact that ESDC, the other government agency, Service Canada, realizes that employers are hurting right now and they need Canadian workers. And so one of the ways to do that is to scoop out more CEC applicants. So we'll see.
Yep. And if you look at the minister's report, this is a blog post that I did, you guys. It looks to me like we've got this one carrying forward. Let me just pull this here down there. That should work. This is a blog post that I did when the minister released his report on, basically the strategy to expand transitions to permanent residence for people in Canada. And these were some of the industries that I highlighted. So, when it comes to what the future holds and what the minister's going to do, he could very easily do a CEC only draw for people that have knock codes in these industries, or he could do a CEC only draw for post-grad work permit holders who've held a post-grad work permit or have 1 year of Canadian, experience on a post-grad. So there's a lot of different things that he can do. And it really just, we're all kind of in a little bit of limbo. I think many people know that I have the Canadian Immigration Institute, and it is probably a good time just to let people know that I did break down and offer a 50% off Boxing Week sale. So if you use that code right here, you can get 50% off any of the courses that we have available here. But I want to point out in the context of the Express Entry course, there's going to be some changes to the course that I'm going to need to make in the spring as the minister starts to reveal what he's going to do with his newfound powers. But in the interim, until the end, December 31st, so we've got another couple days here, you can access this course at 50% off, as well as the other courses as well that we have here. And I'm really excited about the first go round that we had with the study permit course. It is chock full of just about everything that you could want in the context of filing your own study permit application. So I encourage people to slide over there and take a peek at that. Okay, let's see. We have another one. So this one is Sonali, and Sonali says, my CRS is 481. Like, does she have a chance, Alicia, to get an ITA at 481?
Well,
What do you
we'd
think?
hope so. I mean, we had the last draw, the November 23rd draw, the CRS was 491, so it was 10 points higher. It's not been coming down 10 points at a time, so I don't think it would be the next round. But they have been coming down by 4 or 6 points every couple weeks. And so if you look, it started above 500, and then we've been coming down, yeah, it started quite a bit above 500, and then we've been coming down since June and July. When they first started the draws, and it's now down to 491 was the most recent draw. And that had dropped from 494, which was 496 before. So, it's coming down in lower increments. It's not a linear graph or anything like that. And so we need to try to hope that you can increase your CRS if there's any points where you do have a little bit of makeup room, right? Usually language is one of those. If you haven't maxed out your language, that's usually a good opportunity to try to take a CELPIP exam if you took IELTS, or, make sure that you are looking at possibly learning French as a second language is another thing that you can do. So sometimes there are ways that you can increase your points a little bit by maximizing your language scores. And sometimes it's helpful to talk to you in terms of what's going on with your spouse as well. If you have an accompanying spouse and you're looking at whether they can claim points or not for their experience. So hopefully to 481, it will be something that in the new year might be realistic. Right now, we're not there quite yet.
Yes. All right. Next question here. This is from Tinshu. Anne Joy Tinshu. Is an extension for a work permit going to be done for those post-grad work permit holders after December 31st? So I think she's really talking about those who have, that are expiring after December 31st. It's been no movement.
And this is something, we don't know. And so, and I said it last week and I'll say it again too, I really encourage everybody, there's only 2 days left on making sure that if you haven't already done so and you are eligible for that 18-month extension, make sure it closes December 31st UTC time. So you guys have less than 2 days to be able to get in that application if you haven't already applied for the 18-month public policy work permit. Mark has a 50% off on his course. He just showed us here. So this is an extremely good kind of economical way to make sure that you do this properly within the next day and a half. Because after this, we don't know. It doesn't seem like there's necessarily anything else coming because pandemic measures are largely over. The only thing that's been a wrinkle has been the lack of draws under express entry. And they may not be super compassionate about that. So if you are eligible, make sure that you've applied for the current public policy. It expires December 31st, 2022 UTC time, which is not necessarily a time that anybody uses. So go double check what UTC time is in your time zone.
Yes. All right. Okay. Next on our list here is Sahil says, is it possible to submit CEC profile without WES in progress? I have my IELTS score though. So is it possible to get the profile in with just a WES score? With just the language test?
So the two necessary things in order to create your Express Entry profile would be your language score and your education credential assessment if you require one. It depends if you don't require that WES score. So if you're doing CEC and you happen to have done Canadian education, then you don't have to have education credential assessment for Canadian education. But if you do need that WES score or any of the other education credential assessments to try to get maximum points for your education,
Yeah.
it might strategically be worth waiting for it. It just depends if you meet the
Yeah.
minimum eligibility criteria without it.
Yeah. And when you think about CEC, technically, you don't need the education if you have the work experience and the language test. So yes, you probably can submit it, Sahil, but the reality is your points are going to be just so low because you won't have that education. Now, with that being said, like Alicia pointed out way back in February of 2021, there was that draw 176, 27,332 invitations, I think, were issued at that time. One of the factors when you're not dealing with, when CRS scores are an issue, is the tiebreaker. And so, there's no harm in submitting your application and having it in the queue. And, in some crazy outside strange world, Minister Fraser could, let's see, I wonder if I have him. Oh, there he is. He makes appearances everywhere. Minister Fraser could say, people with this knock, they automatically get an ITA in this round of invitations. And so if you're there, that's an entire possibility. So, so keep that in mind as you're going through the process. But clearly, without the language, your score is going to be super, super low.
Sorry, without the WES. He does have the language.
Without the WES. Yes, thank you. Okay, so here is Richard. So Richard says, I managed to catch a live stream. Great, Richard. Congratulations. So he says he's a UK citizen. He just got his CELPIP and he's got 12 across the board, 32 years, software engineer, but CRS tool only showing he has 426 points. And this is not uncommon. So if we think about it, when it comes, obviously age is a factor. So Richard's losing points for age right off the bat. And when it comes to the scoring, if you think to get 469 points, you need to have 3 years of skilled work experience, something I suspect maybe, Richard, you don't have. Actually, let's just see if there's a little bit more. He says, yeah, I have little chance without nominations. And so, yeah, the 426 is the way it is because there's bonus points for 3 years of foreign work experience. There's bonus points under the Federal Skilled Worker Program for a master's degree or 2 or more educational credentials. That's where the points really get boosted. And then you start to lose if you have anything less than that, or your age, if you're older than 29, once you turn 30. And so, yeah, lots of people are in this situation. Their language scores may be awesome, but without that extra, even then you're still only going to hit 469 points. It's going to be a little bit more because you've got your 12s across the board with the CELPIP, but with the CLB9, it's just 469 points. So it's extremely competitive, and you're right. You're right, Richard. For all intents and purposes, until the minister decides to do whatever he wants to do, software, that experience that you have as a software engineer is something that I think probably is going to be on the list of potential, areas of demand for Canada. So it may still work out for you, but PNP, yeah, is definitely a factor. So I don't know if you have any other thoughts, Alicia, for Richard.
Yeah, the other thing I'd add, Richard, is, software engineers, those knocks, often you're eligible for those GTS LMIAs, right? So the expedited LMIAs. So if you can find an employer in Canada who's willing to put you on a labor market impact assessment as somebody in the tech industry, so you've got to be on one of those listed occupations, it might be a way to try to get to Canada under an LMIA supported work permit, start gaining some of that Canadian work experience. Once you have 1 year of Canadian work experience under an employer specific LMIA, well, great. Now you're eligible for a bunch of bonus points for having that Canadian work experience supported by an LMIA. And if your employer's willing to give you a continued job offer, so please take a look at the video that I did and the article that I did about can you claim CRS points for a job offer. It's also called arranged employment points. That's an added 50 points. And so if you can't qualify for one of those provincial nominee programs, the other option is to try to find a Canadian employer. I would recommend that you just go to the free job bank site, which is the national job bank in Canada, and you can sign up for job match. And if you don't have a work authorization in Canada, it's just kind of the regular job match, but you might be able to find a pathway to Canada on a permanent basis if you can come first on a temporary basis with a work permit that's employer specific. So take a look at that video. I did write a blog article on it as well. A lot of people mess up whether they can claim those arranged employment points, and I want to make sure you do it properly.
Yes. And for those of you who are also new to our channel here, if we go back here to our website, you can see here up at the top, we have a blog post section. And so you can sift through and review all of the various blogs. And often there's videos associated with them as well that cover a lot of these topics and a lot of these areas. So just there's tons of information. You can use our search feature here. And yeah, there's lots of additional information to help you guys in your journey. Okay, let's see who's next here as our time is flying away here. Let's go back. Okay. Okay, so Branded Boy says, is there any possibility for IRCC to increase the validity for Canada PR from 2 to 3 years? Did my IELTS General in August, and it's expiring in August 2023, and my work experience will be completed by 2023. So I'm not quite sure if I understand, when it comes to the validity for Canadian PR, you have to show that you have been, if it's permanent residence, that you've lived in Canada for at least 2 years in every 5-year period to maintain it. So I don't know, Alicia, can you figure out what Branded Boy is asking?
I think maybe Branded Boy is asking about the the validity period for the IELTS exams, like for the language exams, maybe?
That's it. Yeah, maybe that's it. Yeah, we don't have any reports. I do want to let people know that to stay tuned, because there will be a special video that we're going to be doing here on the Canadian Immigration Institute that's hosted from CELPIP. And we are a partner for CELPIP now, and it's the other language provider that has increasing spots, testing centers opening up all over the world. And we recently did a webinar with them, and we look forward to doing a podcast as well as a live stream with some representatives of CELPIP talking about that test, which is a nice alternative to the traditional IELTS. Okay.
Yeah. And so far,
yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so in general, language tests have to be valid when you apply for your Express Entry profile and remain valid. And right now it's 2 years from the date that you've written that test. And so be careful about that. So far, they haven't said that they're going to extend the validity period of language tests. So 2 years from the date that you've actually written that language test.
Yes. Sahil just followed up again, said, yeah, great info, guys, but I always have option to update West before ITA since it is in progress. Yes, you always have the ability to update the information in your profile before you get an ITA. Once you get it, then it's locked in, and then you've got some other parameters that you have to take into consideration if you are making changes between submitting your profile, getting the ITA, and then your EAPR. And that's where a consult really can be beneficial. Joseph says, hi, sir. I'm glad you're back. Well, thank you very much. It's great to be back. Okay. Diana says, when do you think Alberta will do PNP invitations? So this is the Express Entry stream. Can my husband and myself have separate Express Entry profiles as main applicants to increase the chances?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's something that I talk about with clients who have, a spouse and they're both working in Alberta, and maybe one of them has the open spousal work permit and the other one's the principal applicant on some sort of employer-specific work permit or maybe a PGWP. And sometimes it is beneficial to have both spouses as separate principal applicants on their Express Entry profiles, especially if they have different NOCs or if they have different background and experience, maybe different years of Canadian work experience. So that is something you can for sure do. You can't have two, nominations that you're pursuing at the same time, but you definitely can have two profiles. And then if one of them gets picked, then that's the one that you end up going on. So in terms of when Alberta will do PNP invitations again, this is a situation where sometimes they just don't really do much at the end of the year because they've kind of worked on their quota, but they are looking at still processing applications on a rolling basis. And so they will continue to do nominations, but if they are close to their quota for the year, they might not do one before the end of 2022, which of course is in 2 days. So it might be looking at new nominations under PNP for Alberta in 2023.
Okay. Hader says, I have French and English. Will this affect my file? Maybe I'll get 498, but I'm afraid to change Bill 19 because my job is an English teacher. Okay, we got a little bit of confusion here. So for Hader here, I think he's a little bit confused in terms of what, how the scoring actually works. What are your thoughts on this, Alicia?
Yeah, I'm a little bit confused about the question, but if you have both French and English
It's
as a language,
positive. Yeah.
yes, it is great because you're going to be putting in two scores. You're going to be putting in your language scores for IELTS or CELPIP, which is the English language exams that are accepted, and you'll have to put in French scores under TEF or TCF. So there's two different ones for each language that are eligible for consideration under express entry. The fact that you have French and English should not be a detractor because you're an English teacher. It's just going to give you more points on language scores. I mean, English teacher may not be chosen under Bill C-19 as particularly an occupation in demand or one that they want to try to promote specifically, but it shouldn't, the fact that you have French and English shouldn't negatively affect you. It should just increase your ability to get a higher CRS score in general.
Exactly. Okay, ZR says, any chance for Canada immigration with CRS 350 as per the new Bill C-19 for construction manager? And what else options can be availed? So this is a classic example of where we pull out our little triangle and we ring that, ZR, because the best way for us to be able to answer that is for you to slide over to our firm website. And it looks like I still have these popping up here. I'm going to fix this. And just basically speak to a lawyer in the top right corner, and then you'll have the ability to book a consult. There's definitely a lot more information that we would need in order to give you direction on what you're asking for. But Alicia, even 350, I guess, depending on what the minister does, if it's truly not focused on CRS score and it really is demand, occupations in demand, possibly.
Well,
right?
exactly. And that's one of the things, like if we take a look at what Mark had up earlier on his blog post, because that was an analysis of what the minister was talking about in terms of their kind of priority sectors when they were looking at Bill C-19, construction's on there, right? Number 9 is construction. And so if you're a construction manager and you've got a knock under the construction codes, starting with the 7s and the 0s, right, and managerial roles, then maybe that is something that could get scooped up on a targeted draw if they said, we want to target for economic reasons construction industry. So, you know, especially if you have Canadian work experience, it wasn't entirely clear to me, if you do have Canadian work experience, but if you've been working in construction management, you might as well create that express entry profile and you can hope that they will do a targeted draw in the spring.
Yes. Okay, Dilpreet asks a question that we get a lot of. So I recently got my study permit rejected. And when I ordered the notes, the officer states that I have low academics. And my question is how I can justify low academics. I also, Alicia, had a client in this situation who had low academics. I had him go and take another course and he didn't do well in it. And he wanted to file the application anyways, and it got rejected again. So this is why do they care about this, Alicia? Why is this so important?
And this is one of the questions, Mark, when I book a consult, when somebody books a consult with me, I ask them these questions. I say, how did you do in high school? How did you do if you have a first degree? What were your marks relative to your peers? And if they were really low, then that's a red flag for officers. If you didn't do well in your courses so far, and you're trying to come to a different country and maybe English is not your first language, then officers are of the opinion that you are probably not going to do well in your study program in Canada. And so they don't think that you'll necessarily be successful. And so I know, Mark, one of the things you and I were talking about in terms of SDS and student direct stream and trying to put a study permit application package together, you don't always have to provide those language test results. But if you do have a good score, if you've got over CLB 7 in all of your fields, then that's something that's going to actually help your application for a study permit, even though it's not always required. Like, you have to do it for SDS, but you don't have to do it for regular applications. But it is a key indicator of how successful officers think that you're going to be in a Canadian program of education, because you need to be able to prove you're proficient at speaking English or French.
Yeah, exactly.
So how you justify low academics, sometimes you can't. Sometimes it's just not a good idea to apply for a study permit if your marks are really low. Sometimes you might actually have to go back and recertify, right? Go and do
Yep.
some programs of
Mhm.
studies in your home country to get your marks up,
Yep.
and then apply for your study permit.
Yeah. And as important stuff asks the same question. The reality is when when your grades are low, this is, like Alicia said, the only way you can really deal with it is to take another course and prove them that, okay, maybe in the past it wasn't great because of all of these reasons. But see, I've now matured. I've taken another course. I've been highly successful. So you need something to counteract it. And so, yeah, this is a reality. And I want to slide over here and just show people. So this is, I'll pull this down here. This is the course, essentially. Let's just close this out here. So this is the study permit course. And you'll see within the modules, there is a ton of information, including top things to do before you submit, top 5 mistakes when applying for a study permit. And we go through the whole entire IRCC process for applying. We talk about the difference between student direct and the regular process. We break down the 2 different ways, the two different portals that you can apply through, and why I like one over another. Everything from gathering your documents, essential tips, all of the documents that are typically included, as well as this magical thing right here, this statement of purpose or study plan. And each of these have individual videos associated with it. But Alicia created this phenomenal little tool to help people address these exact situations that you're talking about that we include in the course. And we've got tons of other resources, but statement of purpose samples, including one for prior refusals. And this is one that I had done as far as a sample statement for a client who was rejected for these exact reasons. And in the refiled application, we addressed every single one of them. And guess what happened, Alicia, when we refiled that application and addressed each of those refusals? Well, guess what happened? They refused it again, even after we addressed it. But the difference harkens back to a service that we offer within our firm, which is under the legal help section called judicial review. And that's what we did, because we armed that application with solid information, addressed every single concern that the officer had. And when they refused, we then turned to judicial review. And of course, the Department of Justice lawyer consented and sent it back. And the application was eventually approved. So even within the context of study permits, so many people, like there's over half of the people who apply for a study permit in many countries get refused. And so this is something that people are facing. But we've got tools to help you. And the study permit course is one of them, with also, us being able to help you directly too.
And what I would say is, please, 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 either make the investment and buy the study permit course. It's not expensive. It's on sale right now, especially. But please talk to us if you can and hire us to help you if you require that help, because putting in a terrible study permit application and then having to deal with the refusal on file already and then trying to remedy it becomes really messy. And so make sure that you are putting your best foot forward and putting together a strong application, because if you do, and you've addressed, all the key considerations on a study permit and you've done that properly with evidence, then you might have a really good case on judicial review, and an officer might get, that might get redetermined by an officer coming back from federal court. But if you don't have strong evidence in the first place, or you shouldn't have applied for that study permit in the first place, then you're setting yourself up for failure. And we would much rather tell you the bad news of don't apply for a study permit yet.
Yes.
Go and get a whole bunch of stuff fixed and upgraded
Yeah.
before you do. So
yeah. And that's
I'm not going to tell you the
challenges.
stuff you always want to hear, but I'll tell you what you need to hear.
We don't.
Yeah.
And one of the things too that people struggle with is sometimes they go through large education agencies or consulting firms where they run, in their home country through local agents who run a high volume of applications through. And what they tend to do often is not be specific to the individual. They tend to use templates and things that, generic statements of purpose. They just swap out names. And if you're using templates in the context of your study permit application, it is very, very dangerous, because officers see the same patterns and then they're like, well, wait a minute, is this even legitimate? I don't think I really buy what's in here, because it looks like the previous three ones, the three other ones, all destined for this school, because it all goes through the same agency. And so I would strongly encourage you to take control of your own application. This is your future. And yes, maybe you've got someone who says they'll help you put it together for a low cost, because the school is the one that's paying the education agency fees. But trust me, you get what you pay for, and it needs to be a customized application that addresses the unique circumstances in your particular case. So never rely just on some generic, statement of purpose or study plan that you found on the internet. You need to tailor it to you. That's so critical.
The reason why what we've developed is different is because it's not just a template. It's asking a series of questions that you have to think about and then put together to make an argument about why this is your study plan. So when I developed that tool, it wasn't just, fill in the blanks and it looks exactly the same every time. I want to ask the questions that I ask people in real life when I'm trying to figure out, how can you as an individual tell the story of why you are applying for this study permit to Canada now, to this school? What's your background? What's your career plan? How are you going to use this education back in your home country? So it's putting together a logical argument based on your specific circumstances.
Yeah. And this letter of intent tool you can see is right here within the course, and it is a wonderful resource. And what people don't realize as they're going through this, and part of the reason that I created the course the way I did, and let me just jump back to the actual course here at the very start, you'll see that there are different ways in which you can file through the secure account or the IRCC portal. And both of these do not have, right as you're building them out, any indication of a study plan or a statement of purpose. Embedded within some country specific forms, there's more details, like for example, Nairobi. It has a really good explanation for what a study plan should look like or what it should contain. But even through the Indian, country specific forms or the generic form, it's silent. And it's one of the most important things, because it allows you to address these bona fides that IRCC uses and loves to use for refusing your study permit application. So there we go. Well, we're already at 1. We better wrap this up. I want to thank all of you for joining in and being a part of this with us. Like we've indicated, the Canadian Immigration Institute right now, we've got a special Boxing Week sale that is open until December 31st. So act now, and there's links in the description, or you can just go to the Canadian Immigration Institute.com website and you can access that. And these do not have masterclasses associated with them. It's the course material, but it is a value that I have not offered for 3 years. So I broke down and made the decision to offer that here at the end of the Boxing Week. All right. Thank you so much, Alicia, for joining. And I want to wish you a happy new year and all of our viewers. And we'll be back at it again next week. All right. Take care.